this snow.
Wow. It's about minus 30 degrees outside, and this is what I look like when it's freezing cold. And there's snow all over the place. I'm glad to get inside to a warm house. This week, it has been frigidly cold. It has been like minus 30 outside. And it got me thinking about some of the most important things that you need to think about when moving to Canada. Let us dive into this video to find out what those things are. Hello everyone, my name is Diakola. Welcome back to this side of life. If you're new here, welcome, and thank you all for joining me today. In today's video, I wanted to get into 3 of the most important things that you need to consider when you want to move to Canada. The first one is definitely the weather. Oh my goodness, it has been cold this week. I have not been outside. I've only been outside once this week, and it was so cold. You might have seen one of my videos that I did at the beginning of the week when it started to snow and I was shoveling the snow. So one of the big things that you need to consider if you want to move to Canada is the weather. It is very cold. Canada is a country that lies above the 49th parallel. And so we get a lot of cold weather and it's prolonged. So you can expect the winter to start sometime in October. Sometimes it starts earlier, October, November, December, January, February, and then maybe by March we start to see some relief. But yeah, it's cold for that long during the year. So we get very cold and long winters. You need to consider that. I mean, you need to make sure that you are prepared for the weather. There's another video that I have, and I will link here or here, about how to prepare for the weather if you want to come to Canada. I remember when we were coming to Canada, and we had to go for an interview with the Canadian High Commission, and our interviewer was asking us, you know it's very cold in Canada, right? And you still want to go? We said, yeah, we know it's cold. We are prepared for the cold, but I tell you, you don't know how cold it is until you actually get here. So that is number one that you need to really, really prepare for. Even though the snow is nice, it's white, you do enjoy the snow sometimes. I mean, people go out in the snow and they go skiing and they go do all kinds of fun stuff in the snow. It does get sometimes very, very, very cold. So you need to keep that in mind. That is one thing that you need to consider when you are coming to Canada. The second thing that you need to consider that I wanted to talk about today is the fact that it is far away from home, especially if you're from Africa, like myself. I'm from Nigeria. It is very far away from home. If you want to go home, if you want to go to Nigeria, you have to first get to either Europe or somewhere in the Middle East, or there's no straight flight from here to Nigeria, for example. And getting to Europe will be like 9-hour flight. And then from Europe to Africa to Nigeria will be another 6 hours. So you're talking 14 hours plus the layover. And of course, that means that the flights are more expensive. So you find that it is not as easy to go back to the home country like it would be if you were in, say, Europe, like UK or Germany or any of those European countries, because it's closer. In fact, I hear that some people will fly from like London to Lagos for the weekend and come back. I mean, if you were here, you cannot do that. You cannot fly, because by the time you fly there, it's 9-hour difference before you get yourself acclimatized and over the jet lag. It should be time to fly back again. No, you cannot do that. You cannot fly home. You cannot fly to Nigeria for the weekend. So that's another thing you need to consider and be prepared for, that it's going to be a long distance from home, and you really, really need to plan for a trip home if you need to go home. That's number 2. And then number 3 is the culture. The culture is quite different, especially if you have children, and the culture they're going to grow up in is going to be different from the culture that you grew up in. Like, for example, myself, in Nigeria, we have the culture of how we relate to people that are older than us. We kind of give them respect in terms of what we call them, how we greet them. In my own culture, a female will kneel down to greet an elderly person, and a male will prostrate to greet an elderly person. But, in Canada, that was one of the things that you had to get used to, that you call everybody by their names. Even if they are like your grandma's age or your granddad's age, you call them by name, and that's just expected. Even though that doesn't mean that you don't respect them, but, just that difference. Like at work, you don't really call your boss by their name. You say sir and ma to them, but here you don't. So that's a different culture, and that's something that your children will grow up with, and you need to consider that and be prepared for that. If you don't really try very hard to instill in them some of that culture from back home, they would lose it. So that is another thing that you have to consider, that you, for example, speak the language to them so that at least they can understand. My children, they don't like speaking the language, but they understand the language. They know what you're saying when you're talking to them. And, whether we like it or not, when we bring children to this part of the world, there is the high likelihood that they will stay here and they will not go back home. That is one thing that you also have to consider when you are moving to a new country and you're moving from Africa, for example, to a place like Canada, that maybe your children will make this place their permanent home, and you should be okay with that. I mean, I know a lot of parents who have these dreams of, my children are going to go back home. I'm going to retire back home, and then my children will go back there. And some of the children do go back. I've seen some who have gone back, but the majority of them will probably not go back. So that is another thing that you need to consider. If you are really serious about moving to Canada and making a future for your family, like I talked about in this video that I will link here or here, these are some of the things that you need to think about. The weather, the fact that you are a long way from home, and the fact that your children will probably miss out on your culture and may not go back. They may not go back to the home country, and they may choose to stay and make your new country their new home. Okay, so those were just my thoughts for today that I wanted to share. If you like this kind of content, do please hit that like button, give us a thumbs up. It helps the channel a lot to grow. Also, comment. What do you think about these 3 things I've talked about today? Comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and also hit the notification bell so you know whenever I upload new videos. That's it for today. That's all I wanted to share for today. Thank you for joining me again. And until the next time, until the next video, you go out and make it the best days of your life. Bye.